Today we're going to be looking at how to fit the Shelly Dimmer 2 product onto a simple lighting circuit with 4 LED lights, which are obviously dimmable, and replacing a standard switch with a switch that's capable of dimming the Shelly 2 remotely, as well as the fact that the Shelly 2 can be controlled via Wi-Fi through the app. It's important to note that the Shelly 2 dimmer, when using an additional switch locally, you can't use a dimmer switch, a conventional dimmer switch, because the Shelly 2's switch input only recognises a contact rather than a dimming resistive change or a current change. So I'll show you how to do that now. That's one of the things they don't really explain in the manual or on any of the videos online that I saw. I had to work it out for myself. But replacing a standard switch with a dimmable switch and the Shelly 2 dimmer coming up right now. In the box you get some instructions and also the dimmer. This is just a QR code for a Facebook page where people are sort of talking about different problems they've had. I didn't find that very helpful, to be honest. This is the Shelly 2. Underneath are the instructions. You can have a look at those. It tells you about the wiring diagram, but I'll show you in a second. So on the unit, you've got several inputs. Starting from the left, SW1 is switch 1, SW2 switch 2. You can have 2 independent switches. To be honest, you could just put them all in series and have several switches all linked into SW1 if you wanted to. It still works. I'll show you how to do that. Then you've got 3 lives. It's just basically giving you extra terminals so you don't have to try and jam wires into one terminal. So 3 lives. A neutral. This unit will work without a neutral, and then on the end you have the O, which is output. That's the feed to your light circuit, and obviously it's feeding a live which it will dim for LED circuits. So let's have a look at the installation. So this is the application. We have a single switch controlling some LED lights in a bathroom, and the client wants to be able to dim the bathroom lights so that when they're in the bath they can have some mood lighting rather than just having the bright lights only. At the moment it's just a conventional one gang one-way switch controlling the lights on and off. What we're going to do is we're going to add the Shelly Dimmer 2 product, which will give them full Wi-Fi control through the app, controlling the dimming from an app from anywhere in the world. But also we want to give them the option of being able to have a switch here that also can control the dimming locally. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it won't work with a standard rotary dimmer. You have to use a push to make contact switch, which I'll show you now. So when you want to use a local control for the Shelly 2 dimmer, you can't use a conventional rotary dimmer. What you have to use is one of these push to make switches. So when you press the button it makes contact, and when you release, contact is lost. So it's basically putting a live into the SW1 terminal of the Shelly Dimmer 2, which then activates the switching mechanism. So the way it's going to work with this, now this particular one is a one gang one way. It's made by British General, this one. Now you'll notice on the back that you've got common L1 and L2. Because it's a one way, the L2 is not in use. It's still there. It must be just to save on cost rather than having different models, different mouldings, I guess. But on the one way, the L1 is the only terminal that works. So when we press the button, L1 becomes connected to common. When we release the button, there's no connection between L1 and common. With the two-way switch, it would toggle between L1 and L2. We don't want that. What we want is a one-way switch. So make sure when you order one of these, push to release, it's a one-way push to release. Obviously this is a one gang, meaning it's just a single switch. If you have several switches and only one of them needs to be the push to release, then you're going to have to get involved with a grid switch so that you can use the different modules to have conventional switching and then also your dimming switch. So I'll show you how this works. So this is the switch we're going to be changing, and the first thing you're going to do is go to the distribution board and turn off the breaker for the lighting circuit that you're working on. Now this one for the bathroom lighting I've already turned off. So I'm going to take this socket off the wall. We're going to be doing away with this socket. Now this one's a bit of a problem because they've corked around it. New houses, a lot of new houses these days, for the air test, you'll find they cork around the sockets. They want to do everything they can to sort of not to fail the air test. So luckily the corks come off with a switch, which is great because the new switch will just cover that. So we've got a dry liner box in there, just come a bit loose. And you'll see in here we've just got our conventional live in, live out. We've used brown and blue with the brown sleeve to show that that's also going to be alive. Now the Shelly Dimmer 2 will work without a neutral. Now in this socket, in this switch, there's no neutral. So we're going to have to use that facility of the system without a neutral. A closer look at this. So on this standard switch, we've got live in and live out. So the first thing we do is we'll take the live in, and that's going to go into the Shelly, into any one of these three L's. So this is a live feed in. Just trim that end. So I'm going to choose the one on the end. So live in to start. Now if we had a neutral next to it, we'd put in the neutral in there, but we don't have a neutral. Now the other wire, live out, take it out of the old switch. These terminals have been folded over. So I'm just going to nip off the ends. And this is our live out, which goes into the terminal marked O for out. So O for out. Okay, so that's the Shelly wired. Next we want to wire onto the switch. So first of all, we need a live into the switch. So we've got this push to make contact, and the live in is going to go into the common. So I'm going to put a small piece of wire into the common. Common's at the top. Tighten that up. And that's then going to go into one of the other L's on the Shelly. Let's go to the next one in line. I'm using two different flat end screwdrivers here because the Shelly needs a really small one, and then with your sockets you need a slightly bigger one. And then we need, so that's live into the switch, and then the output of the switch on L1 is going to go back to the Shelly and into the switch terminal, SW1 on the Shelly. So we're coming L1 here. Let's tighten this up. And then we're going to go into the SW1 on the Shelly. Smaller terminal there. And that's the wiring complete now. So the switch has got L to common, that's L on the Shelly to common on the switch, L1 on the switch, which is the output of the switch, to the SW1 on the Shelly, which sees the output when you make contact. Shelly's got its own live in on one of the other L's. You would have a neutral if you had a neutral in the socket, and that would go in N. We don't. So the other terminal is O for output, and that's your live out, go into your lighting circuit. So now you can turn the lights on and off with a push button. So, okay, so now we've installed the Shelly. We'll just power it up and test that the Shelly device is working with the switch. So toggle, lights go on, toggle, lights go off. So that's just the basic control, lights on and lights off with the toggle. The dimming functionality of this particular switch is by pressing and holding. But before I do that, I need to set up the Shelly Dimmer 2 using the app by connecting to it and calibrating it to this particular circuit. We'll do that next. Okay, so the Shelly 2 has been calibrated and it's all been set up with a direct connection to its local Wi-Fi setting. Now, I haven't added it to the home's network yet. Everything has been done with a direct connection. Once everything is working correctly, the final thing I'll do is add it to the home network so that it'll then be included on the Shelly main control app that controls the home. So let's test this function of this button. We know the toggle works. It worked earlier. Toggle on and off. There's on, there's off. Now when it's off, if I press it by a toggle, it goes on. Now if I press and hold, it'll start dimming. I'm holding it whilst it dims. You can see it going lower and lower and lower. And that's at E, lowest setting. And if I toggle, it goes off. And if I toggle back on, it goes back to the previous setting that you dimmed before. And if I want to make it brighter, I just press and hold. Now it's getting brighter now. And that's full brightness. Release, press and hold, and it'll start dimming. And that's going down to the lowest setting. Press and hold, and it goes back up to the brightest setting. So looking at the switch, toggle is on and off, and to dim, press and hold, and it dims all the way down to the minimum setting. Release, press and hold, and it starts brightening up to the brightest setting. When you get to the setting you want, you release the button, and now you can toggle on and off, maintaining the setting you've chosen. And if you want to change it, just press and hold. Now, it's important to note that if you press and hold from its brightest position, it'll start dimming, so it's going downwards. Once you release, the next time you press to control the dimming function, it'll go in the opposite direction. If you send that all the way up to full bright, then the next time you go on, it'll go in the opposite direction again, which is back down to a minimum. But if you leave it in a mid position, you're not really sure by pressing and holding whether it's going to go up or down. You might forget which way it was going last. So if it goes in the wrong direction, as in it starts getting brighter but you want to go lower, just release and then press and hold again, and then it'll go in the opposite direction, the one you want. It's quite intuitive once you get to use it. So I know it's all working now. I'm going to put everything back together, do a quick test, and then we'll add it to the home network. So we've now put everything back together. Switch is on the wall, nice and tight. Lights are on at the moment. Press and hold, and they dim down. Release, press and hold, and they go back bright again. Release, toggle off, toggle on. Press and hold, send it to full brightness, press and hold, and dims right down to the minimum again. Press and hold, full brightness again. So I'm happy that that's working. The installation is complete. All we need to do now is to add the Shelly Dimmer 2 to the home network, so it can be controlled by the main app and the client, and that's job done.